Greetings of the Spirit from the island of Catalina. From all outward appearances, it would seem that this message is coming to you from a little island in the Pacific. But as I dwell in meditation, the mists of this world begin to dissolve. And truthfully, I feel very close to you, nearer than hands and feet, as if we were standing together in the same room, looking at each other, and could touch each other, see each other, exchange thoughts and ideas together. The symbolism of space, land, and ocean is that oneness is always present regardless of all physical appearances. And if you feel this now as I do, you will understand why we are standing in the one light. The same one light has gone before us and has prepared the way in Catalina for the seminar in April. Everything has fallen into place. The dates are now firm. The seminar begins on the night of Friday, April 11th, continues through Saturday, and ends on Sunday, April the 13th. That's April 11, 12, and 13, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, so that you can get home if you wish on Sunday evening. Of course, this is a very picturesque island with many things to do, and many of you might consider planning a few extra days here, either before or after the seminar. And this time, inasmuch as I will be here, I'll be very happy to see any of you personally, which I was not able to do in Boulder Creek. Announcements are going to the printer very shortly, in a day or two. And I think you should have printed announcements about this, how to get here, and all of the relevant details somewhere near the 15th or 20th of this month, January, which should give you ample time to make your plans and all your preparations. 1975. It's a nice round number with a message for us. But strangely, the message never seems to come as we would expect it. I wanted to do this tape in November, and then in December. Something wouldn't let me. And then one day, on Christmas morning, something happened. Not here. But something happened in Australia. And in a strange way, it became the springboard for the message. It happened on Christmas morning in the city of Darwin, Australia. Just the very night before Christmas Eve, the entire city had enjoyed the holiday glow. Children were singing their Christmas carols. Everybody was toasting the coming new year. They were all optimistic about their future. And of course, there were many who were thanking God for the blessings they had received. But the very next morning, before the Christmas bells could peal out, Santa Claus delivered a strange gift to the people of Darwin, Australia. A cyclone. It roared through the city at 165 miles per hour. Everything in front of it was sheared off the ground. There was nothing left that was over 2 feet high. The damage was total. 90% of the city was level to the ground. Thousands of children and women had to be evacuated. The city was unsafe to live in. There was no water supply. Power was cut off. Over 20,000 homes were demolished. And while the rescue workers tried to salvage something, a fierce rain and a fierce wind prevented their efforts. Cars were literally lifted off the ground. Ships in the harbor were capsized. The people in them never heard from again. That was on Christmas Day, 1974. We think for a moment about those people in Darwin. Were they criminals? Had they in some way violated divine law more than anyone else in this world? Were they corrupt? Were they being punished? But the simple fact is that they were as God-loving and as hard-working as people in any city of the world. They had Bibles. They went to church. They were good people. And what happened in Darwin? Why? And what is the message in it for us? Suppose we find that our faith in God is no greater than theirs. Does that not indicate that we too could be stricken by some kind of disaster like Darwin? Are there not 5,000 cities in this world that are just as vulnerable? Have not many cities already been stricken by floods and diseases, and hurricanes and tornadoes? What is the mistake that we are all making? Can it be corrected? Is there some method for preventing disaster from striking a city? If you and I have been living in Darwin when this devastation occurred, and particularly if you were a woman who had been separated from your husband and had to take your child to another city, what would you be thinking now, just a few weeks after the great destruction? You'd be wondering where your husband is, what he's doing, if he survived, when you will see him again. You'd be wondering if your children are going to have a father. And ultimately you might come to the point of saying, we will rebuild our city, even bigger and greater than before. But is that the answer? That is precisely what the city of Darwin, Australia, is now doing. They are picking up the pieces and they are rebuilding their city. But you see, courage alone, even faith in God, is not enough. Especially if that faith is in a God who permits cities to be destroyed, lives to be shattered, families to be separated, many to die. That isn't faith. Faith in such a God is a lack of faith. It's the absence of faith in the real God. It's hopelessness and helplessness. It's clinging to a God who does not exist. This type of faith is a spiritual vacuum, a blindness, a total ignorance about God. To rebuild a city is not enough. We have to rebuild our knowledge of God. We must rebuild our spiritual consciousness before we can rebuild a city that will endure. And if we do not, tragedy continues to strike, always wearing its new disguise. And finally, we are forced to come to the great secret of life. You've been practicing it all month. Omnipresence. Without the knowledge of omnipresence, you are a city that can be stricken by anything in the material world. Darwin is but an example. It could have been any city in the universe. The same way that Darwin is now reacting to their catastrophe is precisely the way mankind has reacted to war, to disease, and to famine, and to all of the chaos in the world. We pull together the shattered remnants of our lives and we return to the identical consciousness. And that's today the same thing. That's why we're pausing, not passing by, not permitting ourselves to shrug off the Darwin incident as just another place in the globe. Because there's a mighty lesson to be learned from that catastrophe. And it's a lesson that applies to conditions in every city of the world. The people of Darwin are going to repeat their mistake. And they're going to repeat it because they do not know what their mistake is. And 5,000 other cities, just like Darwin, have been making that same mistake for many, many years. And they are going to continue making that same mistake. But you and I, with a spiritual consciousness, will not make that mistake if we now learn what the mistake is, if we identify it, correct it, and eliminate it from our consciousness. And when we have done that, it is our function to demonstrate that it is possible for every city in the world to live without making that mistake. Now that's where the real courage is going to be shown. You and I must cross-examine ourselves mercilessly until we finally confess that there are no cyclones in the government of God. And we must admit to ourselves that as long as we are experiencing cyclones, or any disease, any war, any problem, we are living outside the government of God. And that's where we will remain until we face the only truth that can make us free. There is no inflation or deflation in God. And if we experience one or the other, we must admit that we are not under God's government. Every human crisis tells us that God is not in the human scene. And still there are many people who would rather face a cyclone than come face to face with this simple truth. They'd rather rebuild their houses than rebuild their consciousness, because it's much easier to say that God is punishing us for our sins, or to say Johnny was lucky. He escaped with his life, while forgetting the hundreds and thousands who do not escape. The city of Darwin was not punished by God. Africa is not being punished with famine. India is not being punished with disease. Japan was not punished with atom bombs. And the United States is not being punished with inflation. God has never punished the human race. God has never smashed hospitals or cut off the water supply. The moment we pin the cause of evil on God, or even on the devil, we're eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We're in duality. We're perpetuating the lie about God. And we're living under the false belief that there are two creators. A good creator, a bad creator. Now let's very carefully see this. The moment we accept evil as a happening, we are inviting every evil in the world to attack us. We're being trapped by the world mind into a false identity. And this false identity is totally at the mercy of appearances, because it does not know that God is the individual selfhood of that which we call man. False identity does not know omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. It does not know that God is the only being, the only cause, the only action. That is but half the truth. We've come now to a landmark in our work where each of us knows, or should know, that we are not living as human beings in the world of God's creation. We are living in a mentally recreated universe. And so we have been developing a capacity to look at any storm not through the human mind, but through the Christ mind, which says, "Be still," is I. But now we must learn the truth that is still unknown to most persons in the world, in spite of their sincere, dedicated efforts to know God aright. And this truth is the underlying truth of all Scripture, the truth taught by all the masters who walked upon this earth. If you fulfill this one truth, you walk in the government of God, under grace, free of death, enjoying your eternal life. Ignore it, and you remain in the recreated universe of cyclones, heart attacks, and old age, outside divine government. Everyone who hears this truth has to measure where they are by whether they can accept it or not. The truth is this: your function on earth is to make the Word flesh. If everything you do is geared to that purpose, you will succeed. You were told to be reborn of the Spirit, and that means to make the Word flesh. And so in 1975, 76, and every year thereafter, in this lifespan or in every lifespan that you live, that is your purpose. To make your physical form less and less important until you know that you dwell only in divine flesh. The mistake made in Darwin, the mistake made in cities throughout the world, the mistake being made every day, is that man is not trying to make the Word flesh. And he does not do that because he believes that he has something much more important to do. But we have nothing more important to do. That is our goal and our purpose. Those who have another goal and another purpose may continue to thank the Lord for His blessings on Christmas Eve and find that their universe is blown to bits on Christmas morning. God has given us one assignment. And we cannot afford any longer to say, I have something more important to do. We cannot even say, but I have human responsibilities. Family to take care of, incomes to earn, mouths to feed, bodies to clothe, rent to pay, business to run. Oh no. That's the human picture. Mankind is trapped in it. Science and religion are just as trapped as the rest of mankind. All have something more important to do than what God tells them to do. Be ye reborn of the Spirit. Make the Word flesh. And so, while they continue living in the valley of the shadow of death, trapped in human responsibilities, trying to fulfill them, they merely are signing their own death warrant. Certainly we have human responsibilities. Until we learn that all we have are divine responsibilities. It is the divine will that you be perfect as your Father which art in heaven. That is much more than fulfilling human responsibilities, isn't it? Human flesh can never be perfect as the Father. Face that. Only divine flesh can be perfect. It is your Father's will that you make the Word flesh, that you overcome your mortal sense of selfhood, that your flesh be divine. We cannot ignore that. To demonstrate the function of man on earth, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. That was a teaching that only when you are the Word made flesh can you experience the perfect government of God. Good humanhood is not the way. Not through good human motives, not through philanthropy, not through human prayer, not through singing hymns or shouting hallelujahs, not even through accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. You, Y-O-U, you must step out of your three-dimensional body, out of your material world. You must put on your white raiment, your spiritual consciousness. You must walk now in the kingdom of your soul, in your divine body of soul, for that is divine flesh. It is the Word made flesh, and it alone expresses the will of God. Then under the government of God, your divine responsibilities are performed, and your so-called human responsibilities are also performed, all by grace. Anything less is a state of duality, and it is doomed to fall short of the mark, holding you a prisoner within the world mind. These are not new words. The words that you're hearing now have been spoken on earth for more than 3,000 years. They're in your Bible. They were in the same Bibles that were scattered to the winds in Darwin when 20,000 homes were demolished this past Christmas. These words are in billions of Bibles throughout the world. And they've always been giving us the same message that our eyes refuse to see. You are here to make the Word flesh. The mortal flesh of man is unable to hear the divine Word. And so it continues, going up and down and seesawing between good and evil, suffering the same disasters of the human flesh, and always looking to human leaders to find solutions. And of course, our religious leaders would be the logical ones to respond and to point the way. But they are hampered by the fact that they too are not trying to make the Word flesh. And so we find churches all over the world meeting with goodwill and social grace and all of the nice human instincts that we like to see in people, but no opportunity to experience truth. It would be a marvelous thing if one day, one Sunday of the year could be set aside in every church in the world for truth. We could call it Truth Day. It would be quite a novelty. A minister, for example, might get up and say, today I would like to tell you something that I've not been able to tell you before, something called truth. I would like to tell you that Jonah was not really swallowed in a whale. And I would like to tell you that Noah never built an ark, and he never was in a great deluge. That might make a very interesting sermon. Just think if billions of Christians learned the truth, or if the people of Darwin had heard before the cyclone struck their city about Noah and his ark and had learned that he had not really built an ark, but he had built a spiritual consciousness. And if they had learned the complete story there, would not have 10 righteous men arisen to save that city? Suppose they had been taught something different than a fairy tale. Is it possible that the writer of the story of Noah had gone through a tremendous inner experience, a change of consciousness, a transition while in the flesh from mortal to divine, and that he was now explaining this inner journey using words, numbers, objects, and outer events as symbols of the cataclysmic experience that he had undergone within his own being. Is it possible that in the story of Noah's Ark we find all the divine instructions for us to make the same journey within? And of course, once we have caught this vision, we can see that the writer of the story, presumably Moses, undoubtedly aided by a few others who had a spiritual consciousness, were not recording an actual voyage or the burial of the earth under the sea, but they were teaching us that there are two arcs. The human life is one arc, and the spiritual life is the other arc. And they wanted us to get out of the arc that could not travel through cosmic hypnotism into the arc that could. It was not history they were reporting. It was not a factual story. It was a beautiful divine teaching, clothed in an allegory. You know, it seems quite absurd that up to this point religion has accepted it as a factual story, and that archaeologists are even looking for Noah's Ark. Every now and then you hear somebody say, "We have found Noah's Ark, the original one. We have found a remnant of the gopher wood." And, oh, Lord. It's almost unbelievable that we could have spent 3,000 years of ignorance when just a simple analysis would tell us that nothing like that could have happened. There wasn't enough space on the size of the ship that he was instructed to build to house 2 of every animal in the world. He didn't have time to collect every animal in the world. You couldn't take every animal in the world into one climate when so many animals require different climates. Some of the insects you'd have to gather would have short lives and they'd long die before the voyage was over. Some of the birds. How do you get enough food onto an ark for 150 days without refrigeration? and have that food suitable for every different type of animal. Insect, bird, fowl. There are so many other specific indications that we'll come to in a moment, all showing us that Moses wanted us to know that there is another way of life. He was painting the story that men could not understand, the voyage from the knowledge of mortality to the knowledge of immortality. A voyage in consciousness which brings you to heaven here now through the ark of Christ. Be sure of this, Noah never built a physical ark to weather the universal flood. The universal flood is cosmic hypnotism. And I think we had better look at this story of Noah, because in it we find the answer to all the Darwins of the world. Let's take a second to regather spiritually in the quiet. Yes, it seems perfectly clear that Moses, in presenting the story of Noah, was teaching us that the Word must be made flesh. He was revealing the greatest secret there is in the Bible. That your real ark is your soul body. Which can never die and which can never be drowned in cosmic hypnotism. I'm reminded of Henry Kaiser. You remember his record during the war, building ships so quickly. I'm quite sure that Kaiser never built a ship as quickly as Noah built his ark. And Kaiser had all the material to do it with, manpower and the tool power, the electrical power, mass production methods. But Noah was not building that kind of a ship. He didn't need any power tools. He didn't even need a hammer and nails. Noah was building a ship not made with hands. His ship was invisible. The ark of Christhood. Divine soul body. And with that divine soul body, he sailed untouched through the false powers of our material world. That's what Moses wanted us to know we can do and must do. If religion had been awake, all it had to do was just open its inner eye a little bit, and it would have realized that, well, I don't think Frank Buck could have brought all those animals into the ark. How could Noah persuade the animals to come with him? I mean, did he just walk up to a male and female gorilla and say, follow me into the ark? We're going on a little voyage. Did he set mouse traps for mice and bear traps for bear? Did he invite hot weather animals and cold weather animals? Did he invite lions and lambs? Did he stock up on special foods to cover the individual needs of every animal, every insect, every bird? And did he have transportation to go to the ends of the earth to find two of everything? 2 caterpillars, male and female, 2 giraffes, male and female, 2 penguins, male and female, 2 geese, 2 butterflies, maybe 2 skunks. Did he have the facilities to ship them all back to his ark? Did he have the equipment and the manpower to build an ark that could house such a vast menagerie? I don't think the Queen Mary, ocean liner could have handled all of that. And you know the size of what he had, 300 cubits. We'll come to that. That's about 500 feet. 600 feet, maybe. Anyway, are you getting the point? If religion had given Moses credit for a brain and even a grain of sanity, the religions of the world would have had to say, this is not a factual event. It is an allegory. Moses is concealing an important message about God and man. And he's done it in a story form. Then the great truth might have dawned. The writer is using words and events to describe his own inner journey. Everything that happens outside to Noah is an inner event in the consciousness of the writer, brought into visibility so that we can understand that this is a journey we are all taking now. This knowledge would have opened the way for mankind to understand that the Ark of Noah is no longer to be considered a ship made of wood, but a ship made of spirit. The Word made flesh. Noah is moving from his false sense of mortality, materiality, physicality, to the correct knowledge of his identity as spirit, immortal. And he is learning that he is the omnipresent self. And as he lives in his omnipresent self, he becomes conscious of his soul body, which can never know disease, never know disaster, never know death. Instead of the world burying Noah, Noah's consciousness buries the world. It has taken us 3,000 years. And like Rip Van Winkle, we have been asleep, unaware that Noah's Ark and Christ walking on the water are the same demonstration. Both are demonstrating the Word made flesh, which is the secret of transition and of life under the government of God. And so here we are today, joined in the great project of being reborn of the Spirit, learning to reject every human concept. And that brings us down to the rejection of the human concept of material flesh. must be rejected as reality if you are to accept your divine body as a present reality. So you must know that beyond your sense awareness here and now, you have a divine body. And here and now, that divine body is functioning perfectly. And here and now, that divine body is unconfined to a moment in time or space. It is an omnipresent divine body. And you must accept your omnipresent divine body. And that's what you use to build your daily consciousness. Hour by hour and minute by minute, you must be aware of your omnipresent divine body. Till you actually feel the invisible substance of it. And then you're building the Ark of Noah. You're making the Word flesh. We are pinpointing your entire life to this project. And although this appears to be a very stringent method, everything else that avoids this concentrated effort is the mistake. To follow the Christ is to make the Word flesh. You do not follow a physical Christ. You do not walk behind him on the road gathering dust. You make the Word flesh. Follow my example. I am the way shower. That is your function on this earth and your only function. Your fulfillment of this function is the only way to know God aright, which is life eternal. For that is the true light, and as many as receive this light are given the power to be the sons of God. That's why in the story of Noah, God says to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me. The end of all flesh. Of course, man wasn't prepared to accept the impact of that statement. Man had not yet awakened from the dream of fleshly matter, the illusion of the atom or the sleep of mortality. Make thee an ark, says God, and go forward. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it, within and without, with pitch. The end of all flesh is the end of mortality in your consciousness. It's the end of your material consciousness. It's a divine statement to each of us that we must be made divine flesh. We must recognize that we are divine flesh. The end of all flesh has come before me is the statement that you are divine flesh, and you must recognize that you are not material flesh. How? The pitch, the tar that is to be used within and without the ark is the knowledge of oneness. It fills all the gaps. It makes all parts of the vessel into one seamless whole, within and without. And so the end of all flesh is the end of all duality. The end of spirit and matter. The end of mortality and immortality. The end of God and man. The end of all flesh is recognition of divine identity. Do you see why Moses had to put this in an allegory? Even now it amazes us, even after all of our work with Joel. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. Well, a cubit is the length of your forearm, stopping at the ulna. And that's roughly 20 inches. So if there's 300 cubits for the length of the ship, 20 inches times 300, you got a 600-foot ark. I guess that's fooled a lot of people. They figured 600 feet of ark could hold two of everything in the universe, but it can't. As a matter of fact, if you take away the zeros, you begin to get the message of 300 cubits, 50 cubits, and 30 cubits. Add them up, 300, 50, and 30. But now take away the zeros, and you have 3, 5, and 3. That's a total of 11. And that means 11 disciples. 11 properties that you must develop to achieve your invisible temple, not made with hands. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. The window above is your soul. In 1 cubit is your soul's consciousness of oneness. And through this window of your soul, your 11 divine properties will be developed. You see the code? And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Now, Judas, the 12th disciple, is the door on the side. And that's your mind, which conceives of the false sense of mortal selfhood. Through this door will pass all false beliefs. And the last belief will be that you have a human body to preserve. And finally, Judas will go when human selfhood is abolished in your consciousness and the world mind is overcome. Then a new disciple or a new property will take the place of Judas, and this is the 12 divine properties now, becoming the one seamless ark of Christ, the Word made flesh. There it is, all of it. The lower, second, and third stories of the ark are the 3 heavens into which your soul must sail. These are also the 3 principles which govern the action of the ark. The 3 principles are known as the Holy Trinity, of course. But let's look at these 3 principles spiritually. The first principle is the will of God. The will of God is the Father. This divine will is infinite. It is omnipresent. And from this omnipresent will flows the mind of that will. And this mind of the will is the Son of God. This all-knowing mind is also infinite. And it is often referred to spiritually as the heart of God. The heart of God is the mind of God. In the heart of God, only in the heart of God do we find the will of God expressing. Only in the mind of God is the will of God expressing. It alone is capable of divine knowing. And from the will and the mind of God flow the Spirit of God, expressing the will of God. This is the ghost expressing the power and the wisdom of the Father and the Son. The Father then is the omnipresent will, the Son is the omnipresent knowing, and the ghost is the omnipresent power and the action. The 3 stories of your ark of spiritual consciousness. These three stories express the eternal Word of God. They're always functioning, right where you are, even now. And beside them, nothing else is functioning. And as you dwell consciously in the three principles, in the three stories of the ark, your window of the soul will develop your 12 divine properties through soul energy until, in you, as you, the Word is made flesh. Well, we're not ready to hoist anchor and sail away into the sunset, because I'm quite sure we wouldn't get too far beyond the shallow waters. We still have some passages to take aboard. We have to check our navigation instruments. And particularly, we have to wait for the Word from above. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters from the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. From under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. Mortality must go. We have learned that the will of God is infinite. The mind of God is infinite. The power of God is infinite. Now that doesn't leave room for any other will, any other mind, or any other power. It means that only the will of God is now functioning. And we have also been told that the will of God is to destroy all flesh wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. How shall we interpret that? Shall we walk by and wait for a cyclone to devastate our homes? Shall we continue to treat those words as if they were a fairy tale? Or shall we obey the command to stop accepting matter when it is the express will of God that all flesh must be destroyed? And so let's take a big step. If divine will has the power to enforce its will, do you think it has waited 3,000 years to destroy all flesh? You know better. Spirit is very gently veiling the truth from those who are not ready. But it is telling you, and it is telling me in soul language, that flesh does not exist. There is no material flesh. To destroy all flesh means to destroy the belief that flesh exists. It means to move consciously out of the sense of mortality, to consciously eliminate the belief that God created fleshly forms. For if you stand still in that belief, your ark cannot survive the flood. Belief in matter, belief in a material selfhood, makes survival impossible. We are being forced, if we are faithful to Spirit, to step up into our spiritual mansions now, to overcome human thought that flesh is real. For this alone opens the window above for the divine word to be revealed as our true flesh. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with them. This is the spiritual journey within. Nobody's going to go into an ark. You're not going to take people into an ark with you. You're taking them into your consciousness, and you're making the word flesh by seeing that they too are divine. Take your sons and their wives, those closest to you, you must unsee the material selfhood. There were 7 persons that were to be brought into the ark of Noah's consciousness and yours, and they symbolize the entire human world of flesh. When you go through 7 levels of consciousness, the 4 physical and then the 3 spiritual, the Word will be made flesh. But it's not enough to know no man after the flesh. Everything material must be redeemed from the material appearance into its spiritual reality. Of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Now you know that's not material food to store in freezers and refrigerators. Spiritual food is divine thought. So we feed all matter with divine thought by accepting only invisible spiritual substance where the visible matter appears. We're redeeming our belief in the existence of flesh, whether it's male flesh or female flesh, so that in our ark of pure thought there is one spiritual being, even though 2 of each enter. Let's pause in the silence before we go on with the allegory, the journey in consciousness. While you do, consider your divinity now, please. See the human flesh as a snapshot appearing in time, in space. If you could actually see it, just as an instant, you would see it as a snapshot. And then each succeeding moment is another snapshot, another snapshot, another snapshot. It is a continuity of snapshots, all separated, but run so fast together that you never know from the visual standpoint that this is nothing more than a motion picture called form, pieced together by the speed of light. And you are not in it. You are not in the human flesh. With each command given to Noah, we realize the great self-discipline that is required of us. We are being given the keys to building the soul body. For actually, Spirit is not instructing Noah, and it's not happening 3,000 years ago. But Spirit now is instructing us, using Noah as a symbol of you. What Noah does, you and I must do. And it becomes clearer and clearer that we must cultivate an alert capacity to let nothing enter our consciousness as human flesh, as matter. It's a big order. But that's how you are going to make the word flesh. Whatever hits your consciousness must be redeemed from the human to the divine. Whatever enters your consciousness must enter the ark. It enters as human flesh, but the moment it enters the ark, it has entered your consciousness that it is divine. That's your ark. And the reason you must do this is because the will of God has not created human flesh. And so there is none. And the mind of God, which is the only mind, knows no human flesh. And so if you know human flesh, you are not in the mind of God, you are in a second mind, in a false mind. And naturally, if you're in a second or false mind, you're separated from God. So the great clue here is that as flesh starts to enter your mind, you must be alert. It must hit your awareness that only spirit is. And that is how you build your spiritual ark. The Christ mind knows no flesh. If you stray into the belief of flesh, you stray out of the Christ mind. And if you do not have the Christ mind, you are really declaring that you are not the Christ, the child of God. And so your ship will sink before you start. You cannot know human flesh and be Christ too. You can see that this is where you must cover your vessel inside and without with pitch, with the knowledge of the one self. We could work on this through conversation for another 20 years, and it would do little good if you did not now grasp this point and take it to heart and go out and work with it. You understand it. Now work with it. Come thou, and all thy house into the ark. For thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. If you are faithful to the instructions given, the word begins to form in you. And this is the meaning of your righteousness. This careful daily discipline in which you know one invisible Christ instead of 100 separated appearances in the flesh. This is the real laboring in the Father's vineyard. And this is loving your neighbor as thyself. This is the key to the soul body. No flesh. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7, the male and the female. And of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. And the unclean beasts are the visible flesh you see. Those who walk into your consciousness. The secret of how to redeem them is given by the clean beasts in 7s. This refers to the invisible, perfect patterns that are always present and invisibly manifest. The divine image is there. even though you are seeing the mental snapshots of the senses on a cosmic scale. The perfect patterns are there. The clean beasts are the invisible perfect patterns that God has placed before us. Even where your eyes are seeing unclean beasts or mortal beings. All flesh goes through the 7 stages of consciousness, of which flesh is only one stage. Flesh is actually unfinished, visibly incomplete. But invisibly, all is complete and perfect spirit. Invisibly, all 7 stages of consciousness are already completed. So even though a limited human or animal appears to your consciousness, you must make the word flesh there too. Go all the way. Do not accept the visible as you see it, but accept it invisibly manifest where it has already gone through its 7 stages of Christhood. In other words, accept it clean, accept it perfect, not unclean, not imperfect. The fowls also of the air, by 7s. Fowls of the air are divine thoughts, as contrasted to human thoughts. Flesh comes to you as unclean thought. But as it passes through your consciousness filled with divine thought, you are making flesh clean, perfect, immortal, divine. You are fulfilling the great truth that spirit is all. And so piece by piece, step by step, we're discovering that no one is actually going into an ark made of gopher wood. We're being taught instead that everyone is entering our consciousness, and that they are all invisible spirits, the same one self. And so just as you've been practicing, I am the omnipresent self during the past month, that is precisely what the Noah Allegory is teaching mankind in the Bible. Into your consciousness, whoever comes must be known by you as the one omnipresent I am. You are making the word flesh. All flesh is my invisible spirit. This has been misperceived by the senses. But when you know this, you are bringing all thy house into the ark. The whole man is being transmuted. You're building a vessel that can sail through any flood, through any world condition, right out of the valley of the shadow of death. The whole process is just like a baby being born. Did you ever realize that a baby is born in the 40th week? Or that the so-called body of Jesus was in the grave for 40 hours? That there were 40 days after resurrection before ascension? 40. Whether it's hours, days, weeks, or years, is always a symbol of the beginning of a new cycle. The newborn babe spends 40 weeks of prenatal growth in the womb. Then the germ of human life incubates. 40 symbolizes total purification and the incubation into a new beginning. 40 days on Mount Sinai. 40 years in the wilderness. 4 raised 10 times is the city that lieth 4 square. The 4th dimension of consciousness is a foundation for more building. Always we're cautioned to do our spiritual work with trust, not to push ahead, not to try to force an activity, that is not yet unfolded in its true divine sequence. To learn the omnipresence of your infinite self requires patience and diligence. Accepting every invisible form that your eye cannot see as your invisible self, and knowing that it is the way to the greatest treasure on earth, the kingdom of eternal life. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Still, there are 7 more degrees of oneness to be fulfilled in your consciousness. 7 is always the symbol of transmutation. The 7 persons you took into the ark of consciousness, humanity, must be transmuted. Sons and wives must be oned. Male and female must be oned before Noah and his wife can be one. And all 40 days and nights symbolize the overcoming of all material sense, turning everything into spiritual rebirth. When there are no more positives and negatives, no more male and female, no dualities, then the 6 degrees, represented by the 3 sons and their 3 wives, are completed, and the mystical marriage of Noah and his wife becomes the 7th day. Or, the male and female of you are united into oneness. And out of that is born the new man, the Christ man, who walks in the body of the soul, which is the destruction of all material sense. We're cleansed of all belief in mortality, duality, all personal selfhood is realized never to have existed. The ark is ready to weather the deluge of mortal mind. And Noah did, according unto all that the Lord commanded. The name Noah has an important significance. It means wholeness. The circle completed. In Noah, the 6th day becomes the 7th, when God rests. The wholeness is attained when the end and the beginning are united as one. When we return to selfhood. That's Noah. The end and the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. In Greek, the word Noé means divine mind. And in Hebrew, the word Noah is a feminine word. That's the AH on the end of it. And it means divine principles projected into or impregnated into matter. In French, the word Noël means the birth of divine mind. And in Greek, the word arche, A-R-C-A-T, it's probably pronounced differently, but it's spelled A-R-C-A-T. It means to the beginning. It means the beginning, like seed is the beginning of a new generation. And all this is telling us that Noah in the ark is a symbol of a new beginning, of man's regeneration from the 3rd dimension of mortality into the 4th dimension of spiritual awareness and immortality. And we find a very strange corroboration of this truth in the Bible in the words of Ezekiel. This is very interesting. I'd like to turn to it for a moment. It's Ezekiel 14, and the verse is also 14. 14:14. And here Spirit is speaking about the house of Israel, which of course is spiritual consciousness. And here's what Spirit says. Though these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, meaning they were in spiritual consciousness, in Israel, that is, they should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness, saith the Lord God. Now that's a very interesting statement because it informs us that our soul body is available, but it's going to do you no good if you wait for Noah or Jesus Christ or anyone else or time to build it for you. And then, in a very strange and wonderful way, Spirit does this. Verse 14, which you just heard, is then repeated, almost word for word, in verse 16, and again in verse 18, and finally again in verse 20. So that you have the same statement in four verses, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Always telling us that we must do the work ourselves. And it gives us that information 4 times, indicating that we must rise above the third dimension, into the fourth, where the window of the soul can transmute Shem, Japheth, and Ham, and their wives, all within you, from the mirage of mortal flesh into the divine soul body, which is the ark of freedom for you and for mankind. Ham symbolizes the outer man, and it is said about the outer man that the flesh profiteth nothing. We're all in the state of Ham, in mortality. And flesh and blood, or Ham, cannot inherit the kingdom of earth, the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now, Shem is the inner spiritual life. But Japheth is the core of fire from that light that is fused as you work with the omnipresent self-consciousness, so that the 3 suns become the 3 remaining cycles that we are traveling on to enter the kingdom of heaven on earth. It is said now that Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. I'm quite sure this is not his physical age, but that it is soul language, but his spiritual age. We all have a spiritual age. You are going through a preparation for the same 2 floods. There were 2 floods there, not 1. There was the flood of world hypnotism, and there was the flood of spirit, spiritual light within. As one increases, the other increases. The more light you receive, the more the flood of hypnotism increases, because that's how you're lifted deeper and higher into the light. By daily principles, practiced faithfully, we learn to live outside the sense mind, which is out picturing an unreal world of matter. And in our temporary ark, which is the human body, the human mind, we live outside the sense mind as we let the fowls of the air, divine thought, enter our experience, changing our thought substance, so that dramatically our new thought substance, being divine, begins to outpicture a heavenly world. we begin to experience the new ark, the body of radiant light, which makes the journey from incarnation to discarnation safely under God's government. And this is a totally different experience than human death. In your preparation, while you are still appearing in human flesh, you reach the spiritual age of 600, which means that you have completed 6 degrees. 6 qualities hidden within have been quickened, energized, and released. The soul has been imprisoned all these years in a false sense of body, but now the soul is no longer imprisoned, and it conceives your soul body, which is now ready to cross the waters, to see the golden sunrise at the end of the 4th watch of night. Each of us is going through the journey in which we find our second mother. First, in the ark of incarnate flesh, we are born of water, born of the human mother. And in the second ark of divine flesh, we are delivered from the second womb into the spiritual universe. Noah is now ready for the crossing over. The changing of 6 pots of water into wine at the wedding in the city of Cana had the identical meaning as the 600 years of Noah. It's a sign that the divine body you're building from within, by change of thought from human to divine, is ready for the great deluge from within and from without. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, into the ark because of the waters of the flood. We have a reminder here that you are in the 6th degree only when there are no more sons, no more relatives, no more people, when they've all disappeared within your consciousness. When you accept their invisible reality as one spirit, one flesh, divine, then you are no longer serving the senses. Now you are a faithful servant of spirit. When you've done this with the clean beasts, and of the beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. When you've overcome material distinctions between male and female, seeing one spirit where separate male and female seem to be. And so there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah unto the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. Each 2 was transformed by Noah's consciousness into one spiritual presence. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. It is this knowledge that you practice of only one spiritual presence over the earth, over the waters, and over the sky. Maintain, even in the midst of all material world appearances around you. This is where the second birth takes place. These are the labor pains. You're standing fast in the one spirit, while the whole world knocks at your door, and while you know that nothing is there except one infinite spirit. This breaks the bubble of cosmic hypnotism, and spirit moves all false material sense out of its path. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. The windows of heaven were open. It's in this 6th degree that something very special happens. Not in the second calendar month. The second month is simply another mystical code. It means the number 2. And the 17th day of the month is part of the same code. Take the two numbers of 17, 1 and 7, add them together, and that gives you 8. To that you add the number 2, and you have a total of 10. So the second month and the 17th day of the month are a mystical code for the number 10. Now, in esoteric language, the number 10 signifies the 10th door. And this is also known as the spiritual eye. Jesus referred to it when he said, if your eye be single, your body will be full of light. The spiritual eye, or the 10th door, is the first degree of the 7th heaven. It is here that the birth in the second womb is taking place. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. That means hold this consciousness. Hold it. Stand fast. Don't let the belief in flesh enter. Conquer it. Be still and know omnipresent spirit is all. Let the world rain its cyclones and its floods, and let the winds howl. Let the very foundations of your human life shake, but cherish the new life growing within. Protect it. Safeguard it with the umbrella of your spiritual consciousness. Treasure that divine child that's being born within you above all else, that the Word may be made flesh, and for you, heaven will open. Patient. Spirit reminds us again and again that the male and the female of all flesh went into the ark with Noah, so that we will understand that Spirit requires us to redeem all flesh. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. As you are faithful to omnipresent Spirit, rejecting the belief in separated forms of flesh, you are lifted above worldly concepts. Without trying to overcome time and space, it is overcome. For you are inside the ark of oneness, and while the world hypnosis rises all around you, your love of Spirit being total, above personal sense, in absolute faith that only Spirit is and Spirit is perfect, this spiritual faith becomes the invisible ark within you, which lifts you above the earth, above every false material power. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. And all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubit upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. 15 cubits. 1 and 5, total 6. Your consciousness is moving up another degree to another seventh day as you stand fast in the flood of cosmic hypnotism. Finally, material consciousness must die, and Christ is born. Conscious union with God is realized, and all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. One spiritual self realized, omnipresent, without opposite. Is that not clear? That the world was not being buried, but that in consciousness, the writer was explaining that we overcome the material sense of universe. And every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Only Noah remained alive. In that one phrase, you can find the reason that the true story of Noah's Ark couldn't be written in the Bible as you're hearing it today. Could the writer say, I have reached the point where I know that I am the only man alive? You know he would have been stoned to death or put into a straitjacket. What good could come out of such a strange utterance when nobody at that time could possibly understand him? Moses never could say, I am the only man alive. But he could say, I am that I am. And that means, beside I am, there is no other. Even Jesus didn't say, I'm the only man alive. But he did say, I have overcome this world, meaning I have overcome the belief that there's another self than God. So the writer of the great truth of oneness had to have the world die in a flood. He couldn't have it die in the consciousness of Noah because the human mind was not ready for such a revelation. The earth and all it contained was not being destroyed in a flood. The flood of cosmic hypnotism was destroyed in Noah's consciousness. And it was destroyed by another flood, the downpouring of divine spirit, which lifted Noah into the Christ mind, the realization that God has no opposite, for God is all. And God remembered Noah, which means that Noah was now aware of the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated, and the ark rested in the 7th month of the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. "150 days of rain, 1 and 5, meaning 6 degrees of inner development, leading to the 7th month, the 7th degree, and the 17th day of that month, 1 and 7, meaning the beginning of another cycle of 7 degrees, like the octave. 7 notes, and the 8th note is the end of that octave, but also the beginning of the next octave. 1 and 7 mean the beginning of a new cycle of another 7 degrees. You'll find that a new cycle is always indicated by 40 days, 40 months, or 40 years. These new cycles always appear between progressions of 7. which is a sign of continuous transmutation. And this conveys to us the knowledge that we can never find a comfortable hole to crawl into and relax and say, this is the groove I have wanted. I know we've said this 100 times before, but Spirit, too, repeats to us constantly that we must always go on to the next 7 degrees, the next 7 degrees, the next 7 degrees. That the 7 days of creation, each of the 7 days is divided into 7 degrees, and each of the 7 degrees is divided into 7 degrees. It is an infinite nucleating out into the newness of spiritual selfhood. And the moment you crawl into a comfortable place where you want to stop, that's the moment you stop living in the Christ mind. It is the willingness to be totally free, with no prejudgment, no preconcept, no idea as to what you want to be, other than to be the living Spirit, with no consciousness of a material world accepted. We've seen the birth of Christ consciousness as it lands upon the mountains of Ararat. This is where the human world worships, in the mountains of Ararat. It's here that we worship the power of matter, of the atom bomb, of armies, of possessions, the make-believe powers of science and of religion, the false material powers that we hope can control our lives. On Ararat, we worship the human mind and the false forms that it conceives within itself and imagines to be external to itself. Here we worship the false Christs who promise us salvation in their tomorrow heaven that never comes. Because heaven is here now, and that is the meaning of landing in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountain of Ararat. The realization that this is heaven, which the sense mind has not known. We're in the wrong ark, in the wrong body, in the wrong universe, in the wrong beliefs. And so we see that Mount Ararat is the symbol of world hypnotism under which the human mind functions. The false powers of the world which the human mind obeys, fears, and tries to conquer. And Mount Ararat includes all human governments, all atoms, all particles of matter, all mental energy, all space, all time. Now the ark rests upon the mountains of Ararat because Christ consciousness, spiritual consciousness, not fleshly consciousness, breaks the world hypnotism, takes dominion over all false powers of earth, and over all matter, and over death. Noah has now put on the garment of Christ's self. That means we can. He is no longer naked. He's clothed in white linen. In the Bible, you know, nakedness means incarnation, flesh. Whoever stands in human flesh is naked. Incarnation is a state of nakedness. Adam thought he had human flesh. And so Spirit said to him, "Who told thee thou wast naked?" Meaning, you are already clothed. Your reality is divine flesh. Again, when Jesus says to his disciples, I was naked and ye clothed me, that is a spiritual way of saying that until we overcome the material sense of human flesh and accept Christ's flesh, put on the Christ self, we are naked. Now, in his realized body of radiant soul light, Noah is no longer naked. He hasn't traveled anywhere. He didn't get into an ark and sail over an ocean. All of this journey has been in his upward lifting of consciousness. He's no longer confined in his mind by a coarse body of atoms. He realizes that he doesn't live in an incarnated body of flesh. Nothing has changed, actually. He never was incarnate. He never lived in a human body of flesh. He simply thought he did. What has changed is that the hypnotism is now broken and he knows the truth. You shall know the truth, that you are not incarnate in a body of flesh, and the truth will make you free. The dream of mortality has been shattered by truth and consciousness. And this is the whole purpose of the story of building the ark, to sail safely through nothingness into reality. So now a new cycle must begin. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. And in the 10th month, of the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. You see, every 7 days, or every 7 degrees, contains 7 steps within each of the 7 degrees. The 10th month should be translated 1 and 0. And 1, forget the 0, 1, you have the first day, the first step in the first day of the new cycle. And so now we're looking out in a new world. We're now in the kingdom of God. We're no longer seeing through a glass darkly. Gradually, the fire within has purged the veil to such an extent that earth crystallizes now into transparent gold. This is now the beginning of the enchanted new cycle, heaven on earth. You believe it? Is it a story? Or is it the Spirit of God instructing us? I believe it. I believe nothing else. This must be the way of Christ. This is the way of Joel, the way of Mary Baker Eddy, the way of Methuselah, the way of Enoch, the way of Krishna, the way of the Buddha. This is the way of all who travel the Spirit. To come to the city of transparent gold. Where the eye looks out upon reality and recognizes itself. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. He didn't shout, "Hallelujah, I've broken the veil. I'm in heaven at last." Instead, he does a very strange thing. He sends forth a raven. And the raven flies around and around until the waters were dried up from the earth. Is that surprising? You see, the raven is the natural man. The humanhood that still will not accept the rule of Christ's consciousness. Even Jesus showed that by the 3 temptations after his 40 days in the desert. The world mind still wants to dominate. It offers us power. It tries to restore our false selfhood. and it uses every subtle device at its command to make us mortal again. And now Noah sends out 3 doves, one after another. He sends forth the first dove to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, and pulled her unto him into the ark. This comes as a shock. Here we have found heaven, but the whole world still remains in cosmic hypnosis. What you're really seeing is spiritual perfection and oneness, but the whole world is still enslaved by the false powers of duality. You are seeing something that the world is not seeing. The world is seeing struggling mortal forms, totally separated from God's government. And they're trying to pull you back into this world of unreality. That's the first dove. After you've pulled in the raven, the human selfhood that wants to rule the world, you know that's not your function. You're not to take dominion over the world. This is a very hard thing to realize. You're not learning how to take dominion over this world, because it would be a false dominion. There's no world to take dominion over. I have overcome the world, said Jesus, but he didn't overcome Rome. He didn't accept the offer of the world mind to be king of all the kingdoms of the world. Christ's dominion is different. Christ's dominion is freedom from the world. It's freedom from mortal boundary, from mortal concept, from mortal imitation. Christ's dominion has no world to dominate, for only the kingdom of God exists. So Noah still has to do a little homework. He has to overcome the temptation to believe that a world exists. And so he stays yet another 7 days. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from the earth. This olive leaf is a symbol of his own immortality. There are levels to be attained even after the first glimpse of Christ consciousness. We mustn't expect the world to know what has happened to us or to reciprocate our newly found freedom and joy. Nor can we tell them what we have found. Our function is to bless them silently with our spiritual understanding, to keep building and expanding our consciousness, to embrace the entire world as one spirit. For as we do that, the second dove will return with an olive leaf. That will indicate that part of humanity has been touched by the Christ. Living on earth, quietly building their own spiritual consciousness, there are now others, the second dove. And they are making their way to the light as we are. So continue to bless the world silently with your love and your peace. Inevitably, those spiritual ones on earth, represented by the olive leaf, will be led to build their ark of consciousness, and they too will sail safely through the hypnotism to cross over from incarnation into life. Be patient with your inner work. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove which returned not again to him anymore. That's the third dove. He sends it forth, and it doesn't return to him again anymore. And that's what we want to do. The world never sees the third dove. The third dove is your invisible Christ consciousness, which lives among men, seeing no man after the flesh. When you are living in this invisible ark of oneness, the one infinite Christ self, not knowing mortality in yourself or in others, but only knowing one immortal self regardless of how many so-called mortals appear or how many mortal conditions appear, then your infinite, immortal selfhood is the selfhood of all who walk the earth, and your third dove is the infinite ark of oneness encircling the spiritual universe. I'd like to continue this, but I also feel that rather than continue it, I would like to break right out of this at this point, because I want you to take with you an assignment. Now, that assignment is based upon what you have heard. The third dove. But I want it to be a secret one, an assignment that you share with no one. And the reason is because if you do, you will be out of oneness. I share this assignment with you because we are spiritual selfhood, one spiritual selfhood. I am talking to myself. I am listening to myself. There is no me. There is no you. There is our one self. And we can discuss this together. And so I ask you to treat this assignment as very secret and very sacred. Your assignment is to make the Word flesh. To spend your next month building the invisible ark of Noah. Now, do not think for a moment that this is something apart from your normal everyday function. I don't care where you are, home or office. Everything you normally do must become a part of this one major goal, making the Word flesh. Let's see how we're going to do that. You live somewhere. Well, I live on an island. Perhaps that's the way to say it. On this island, of about 1,500 people, my assignment is to make the Word flesh. And that means that I cannot see people here. I cannot begin a day unless I accept one omnipresent self on this island. And all there is on this island then is Christ. This is not Catalina Island. This is Christ Island. And there can be no activity on this island but the activity of Christ no matter what appears. And so the name of this place, the name of the people, and the name of my identity are all one and the same. The invisible Christ self. And it's that name and identity that I must see every day faithfully, whether it's the manager of Safeway or the ticket taker at the ferry or the newsboy on the boardwalk selling the Sunday paper. even the waves and the wind, or the sunshine, or the soft mist, or the fog. Whatever happens here must be seen as the one invisible Christ. Now that is what I mean by making the word flesh. And so you must pick your area of activity. Mine just came naturally, Catalina. Wherever you are, it isn't a geographical area that you pick. But let's say you are a lawyer. You can pick the legal profession as your area, and that's not a geographical area. You can bless all those in your profession. Make the word flesh. Or if you live in a mobile home complex, you can bless all in the mobile home. Or if you're a member of a club, you can bless the club. This is your project, to make the word flesh. Not to see members of a club or people who live in a mobile home, but to see the word flesh. To see the living divine substance as all that is there. And the way to determine just how you will proceed is to first go into meditation and let Spirit tell you what group you ought to bless. That's your first step. In meditation, you're waiting for Spirit to tell you, what group shall I bless? Shall it be the people at the office? Shall it be a geographical area? Shall it be the people of my club, the people who live in my condominium? What shall I consider my area in which I make the word flesh? And the reason I say your area is world work on a vast international level never gives you the final knowledge of what you're accomplishing. So you never have confirmation of your work, and you don't build your confidence that way. It's too vague, too vast. And so we want to take a specific area. And when you see results within that area, you will build confidence that way. Then you can expand later. So first step, meditate. But don't tell the Spirit. Let Spirit define for you the scope of who, what, and where you're going to concentrate your spiritual work of making the word flesh. And discuss this with no one.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into our channel. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button below. It really helps us out. And why not share this video with your friends? Spread the word and help us reach more people. Lastly, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so you never miss a new video from us. Thanks for watching and see you next time.